Welcome back out here. I am loading up for our farmers market. As you can see, we've got a ton of plants up in the van here, utilizing it very well. And I may even build some more shelving through here to fit more plants, but for now, this is going to do. And as I'm loading up all these plants here, I just wanted to run around and share the back side of the greenhouse, run to the back. And I wanted to share how we're getting all of these plants potted and how we're not spending a ton of money. Let's get in the shade cloth. And how we're not spending a ton of money to get all of these potted plants, because you could simply spend a small fortune just buying potted soil. So we've found ways around that, and it's a more nutritious and healthy option for the plants that we're selling. And all of our produce says so, because all of these plants are doing extremely well, and we produce most of our own soil. We do buy some perlite, vermiculite, and a little bit of potted soil, but we really stretch those costs that we are incurring. So I wanted to share that with everybody. Now, if you find that interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're gonna go check this out here. Got my son in front of me. Messing around with the fish pond here, feeding his fish up. As most of you know, we use our compost heating systems throughout the winter. This is our large compost heating pile. It started at like 9 tons this fall, and it's probably broken down here. We've probably lost a ton or a ton and a half of material, and you can just see all of the moisture in there. You can see the moisture running down. Very cool. And the dead center of this pile is going to be some black gold. That is perfect material, perfect for our whole entire property. And as we enter the warmer months here, we like to disperse this across the entire property, but some of that is not finished. So what we do with the unfinished crust, or the outer layer, is throw it in compost rings. You can see this ring. This was a ring, this ring right here. And as we get down to the bottom of this soil here, you are seeing some seriously good material, and you always have your wood chips and stuff like that falling into it, broken down, unbroken down, and super fine material. So how do we get all of that really fine material into a flower pot? Is through our sifter here. Lots of shadows, it's super sunny today. So we made ourselves these little sifters. We've got maybe half a dozen of them. Super simple, and we've had this one for a couple years now, and they last quite a while if you protect the wood. We always use these little free handles here. Now we find these all over the place. You can find them at garage sales or resale shops, very cheap. So these are relatively cheap. We always use recycled wood, and the only expense we really have is the mesh and the little screws we use to tack these together. So here we've got our bin with potting soil, and this is expensive potting soil. We could spend anywhere from $10 to $20 for 2 cubic yards, depending on what kind of soil and what kind of quality you actually want from the soil here. So this is good, expensive soil, and this is everything that we've sifted through. Now, I want to really show this stuff here. It is super warm sitting in the sun there, but this is black gold. We've got little pieces of unbroken down stuff, but that is going to feed our material. We've got shade from our tree there. I just want to show the consistency of that soil there. This stuff is very rich, very nutritious. We've got life in it. Very good soil to be building upon. And I just want to show for scale, that is about how much potting soil we will mix with an entire bin. We could basically just go with our own created soil for absolutely free, but I do like to mix some potting soil for the vermiculite and humus and stuff. But we've got a lot of humus in here. It's not too heavy. It's very good, clean stuff. Very good, clean, got humus, got everything you need in there. And what I really don't like about potting soil is that they use sphagnum peat moss, because harvesting the sphagnum is terrible for the environment, terrible for the planet. So we are probably a lot better off on the earth without harvesting all that peat moss from the soil or from the ground. and making our own soil here. So just by simply creating these compost rings out of mesh wire or whatever you can use, some type of old recycled fencing or anything, you can create a lot of your own soil. I mean, we have 3, 4, 5 of these rings going at a time, and we can create enough matter and soil inside of one of these rings, and we can sift through it to be able to allocate tons of plants, tons of potted plants. I mean, this stuff is really, really good for your plants, annual and perennial. Now, just by simply taking all of the unbroken down material and throwing it into compost rings, which yes, it does require a little bit of work and input, but the output and the results are well worth it. We definitely reap the reward with all of this black gold we create, and I have it in this bin. We have bags full of it. I just try and save it and harvest it so I can keep it for ourselves and to spread and to put into our potted plants so we can mix it up with soil and really stretch those incurred costs that we have for each farmer's market season. Now, this is considered cold composting or semi-cold composting because we're not actively heating these up. I do throw comfrey and a lot of green stuff in there, so it heats up once, but I just basically leave these rings open to the elements. They dry out, they get damp when it rains, and then we let them run their own natural cycle, forming their own little crust. We will break the top crust that isn't breaking down because it dries out from the sun in the summertime. But underneath that 2-inch crust, we have black gold under there. And we continue to produce this for absolutely free. Like I said, it takes a little bit of work to make those compost rings, but this semi-cold composting process is very well worth it in the long run. And I say semi-cold because, as I said, we do add some nitrogen. Our comfrey, urine, chicken poo, farmyard waste, anything you can find to add the nitrogen and mix it up real good with that top crust from a huge compost pile, all of our wood chips that are soaked in nitrogen. But we do have that crust. There's about a foot of crust, maybe 6 inches to 8 inches, maybe a foot of crust on the outside of that pile, totaling maybe half a ton or more. So as we break that pile down, we are pulling that crust and throwing it into these cold composting rings, and it heats up for maybe a month, maybe 2 during the summertime, and then we leave it throughout the entire winter, and all of the microbes, all of the bacteria, all of the microorganisms, worms, and all of the little critters break that down for us, perform the natural process, and then we are able to reap the rewards by creating the natural process of composting without having to do a whole lot of work turning it or anything. And yes, it does take maybe a year, 2 years for some of these piles when we do huge piles, but we always have them cycling. So I have a pile that I'm able to pull from, and then we've got more just sitting and doing their thing. So we're constantly able to pull these rings off and harvest all of this soil, and we absolutely need it because we cannot go spend $500 on soil or something. We've only spent under $100 total investment into this season's market, and that is a great point to make, is that we're not investing a ton of money. We are doing it as natural as possible, and this is relatively free of weed seeds. So we're not having a whole lot of weed seeds, and creating a hot compost pile to start is a big part of that, because that center does cook and it gets hot, and then it slowly cools off and just breaks down. So as we pull the crust off of that, I'll reiterate, we do pull the crust off so we don't have large matter or large pieces that are going to draw nitrogen, such as wood chips. Like if you're planting tomatoes or peppers into this stuff right here, you are not going to want large wood chips around your roots or sapping the nitrogen out of the soil and thus creating yellow and weak plants. So I really wanted to share how we're getting this free DIY soil that is super packed with nutrients and minerals for all of these plants that we're producing, because in those pots they need an extra boost, and that's why people are buying Miracle Grow and all those super packed potting soils, because in a pot it doesn't have any extra nutrients, it can't tap into the ground. So providing a superfood for the plants with your own compost, fully finished compost, basically your own soil, nutrient packed soil, you're able to keep those plants alive, as we've started these plants months ago. We've started a lot of these plants over a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, and they are finally to the point where we are ready to go sell them. It's early May. We've had our last frost in the middle of June before. So it is a very early spring, and we're taking advantage of that, heading out to our local market to really get out there, make profits, and we're going to reinvest it into our homestead, into our greenhouse, and all these videos for you guys. I'd like to thank everybody for checking this video out. I have a ton more work to do. We've got rhubarb, radishes, and a bunch of onions and stuff to be harvesting, so we're going to get all that cleaned up and taken to the market tomorrow. And I would like to thank everybody for watching this. Thank you to my subscribers. If anybody has any input on this or any questions, definitely drop it in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.